What do an award nominee, a frisbee football VR game, and a veteran mobile franchise all have in common? You won't be seeing them in 2024. For years, Apex Legends brought in fans playing on a variety of systems, but in 2022, Android and iOS users got in on the action. Apex Legends Mobile debuted on May 17th, and at the time, it seemed like the game could be a dream come true for Apex fans, who just couldn't get enough of the game on their home consoles or PCs. Sadly, that dream didn't last very long at all. On January 31st, 2023, Respawn Entertainment announced that Apex Legends Mobile would be coming down. The developers said that there were concerns about the quality and quantity of content being pushed out for the game. So on May 1st, 2023, its servers would officially be shut down. A live service game lasting less than a year is a major blow to fans, of course. But the situation is worse for anyone who spent money in the game because no refunds are coming their way for any of the content they're losing access to.
What a ripoff!
In another attempt at securing new players by porting a game to mobile devices, EA spent some of its time in 2022 developing Battlefield Mobile. The game's open beta began in November, and for a moment it really looked like the classic Battlefield experience could find its way to Android devices around the world. But apparently, EA had a complete change of heart about focusing on mobile titles. In a short blog post, the company announced the end of Battlefield Mobile, claiming its decision was motivated by its current view of the industry and a desire to, quote, create a deeply connected Battlefield ecosystem. Unfortunately, whatever deep connections EA is aiming for won't involve a smartphone for the time being. The mobile versions of Apex Legends and Battlefield are far from the only games that EA is putting an end to in 2023. The company released an update addressing its decision to shut down online services for dozens of other titles at the beginning of the year. It said that many of the games had dropped below 1% of peak player levels, and at that point, the cost of keeping the games online became too much. Most of the games that EA is sunsetting throughout 2023 have been around for a long time and have more than enjoyed their time in the sun. Dozens of sports games will be going offline at some point in the year. Shooters like Crysis 2 will also see their servers closed, along with games that only have limited online options like Mirror's Edge and Dragon Age Origins. A team of 4 Sentinels plan to climb a seemingly endless tower whose floors are flooded with enemies. Luckily, every squad member is armed to the teeth, and thanks to the support of an implant called the Gideon's Coffin, everyone has 4 weapons that can help shred through their opponents. Babylon's Fall aims to give gamers a cooperative action RPG with endlessly engaging combat. Instead, it completely dropped the ball on almost every level. Lackluster gameplay, terrible graphics, and an overpriced battle pass all added up to a colossal failure. Setting aside the game's many flaws, Babylon's Fall also released just a week after Elden Ring, so it was doomed no matter what. In September 2022, just 7 months after the game's launch, the production team announced that Babylon's Fall would be shutting down at the end of February 2023. Crimesight is a classic whodunit, but the game's slight twist is that players are attempting to solve a crime that's yet to be committed. 6 characters are brought together in a manner, but one among them is a killer and another is a doomed victim. The game is geared toward online play and even encourages people from different countries to overcome language barriers and cooperate by communicating through in-game stickers. Sadly, Konami announced on Steam that support for the title would be ending on May 1st, 2023, after only launching in April 2022. Players were caught off guard by the announcement, and Konami didn't list any specific reasons for shutting it down.
Because we feel like it.
Developed by Remedy Entertainment and Smilegate Entertainment, CrossfireX looked to be a fairly typical military-themed shooter. The Xbox exclusive earned poor reviews because of its underwhelming map design, frequent bugs, and nearly broken shooting mechanics. CrossfireX is yet another would-be live service game that met an untimely end. The developers said that the game's servers would shutter on May 18th, 2023, barely a year after they went live. But considering how poorly CrossfireX was received, it's unlikely that many gamers will miss it. Dragon Quest: The Adventures of Dai: A Hero's Bond came to Android and iOS in September 2021 as a free-to-play game. It offered a low-stakes way for new players to check out the series, while giving longtime fans a new way to enjoy Dragon Quest. Rather than relying on traditional JRPG combat formula, A Hero's Bond lets players hack, slash, and magic blast their way through waves of enemies, while exploring various dungeons in a party of 4. Thanks to the strength of the existing franchise, genuinely entertaining battles, and a set of microtransactions that weren't entirely overwhelming, A Hero's Bond enjoyed a healthy lifespan. Players were treated to regular updates and an expanding story, which made Square Enix's sudden announcement about ending the game all the more surprising. On January 25th, the company stopped selling content in the game ahead of shutting down the whole thing on April 26th. Square Enix promised to deliver the final chapters in 2 different in-game storylines to give players some sense of closure, but the company offered only vague reasons for the overall decision. After 5 years of high-flying action, developer/publisher 6FOOT revealed that Dreadnought will be wrapping up on March 19th. Since 2018, Dreadnought has been filling a niche in the free-to-play market and doing it exceptionally well. The game focuses on spaceship combat at an epic scale, giving players minute control over every facet of their ships. Dreadnought really had a good run, and 6FOOT is trying its best to give the game a finale it deserves. Multiple in-game events are scheduled for the closing months, so fans can soak up all the glory of battle before the servers go quiet. Echo VR debuted on the Oculus Rift in 2017 and gave VR one of its most popular competitive titles. The game looks and plays like a round of frisbee football held inside the battle room from Ender's Game. Players move through a zero-G environment, passing a disc to their teammates and trying to dodge punches from their opponents. Developer Ready at Dawn announced that Echo VR will be going offline in August, much to the dismay of fans. The studio said it needed to close the game to focus on its next project, but that reasoning doesn't make sense to many of its players. Pulling the plug seems like a drastic move when Echo VR doesn't get many content updates anyway. Even with a low amount of support, it's still a hugely popular quest game with an active community. In 2022, Square Enix released a game that could capitalize on the popularity of battle royales, the ubiquitous of smartphones, and the gaming world's endless passion for a certain Buster Sword-wielding protagonist. That concept became Final Fantasy VII: The First Soldier, and it almost worked. The game's core concept turned out to be pretty fun, but its main issue was something Square Enix probably should have seen coming. Battle royales just don't translate particularly well to iOS and Android. The game suffered from a messy control scheme, and plenty of devices struggled to get it to run properly in the first place. The First Soldier definitely deserves some credit for trying something new, but that wasn't enough to keep the game alive. Square Enix made the end-of-service announcement on Twitter, and the servers shut down on January 11th, 2023. Guns Up is a free-to-play game that has been entertaining PlayStation fans since 2015 and PC players since 2018. The game takes a pseudo-tower defense approach to its warfare. Players get to construct their own bases and layer in artillery and upgrades to defend them from incoming soldiers. The more battles they survive, the more they get to boost their own soldiers and defenses. Fans of the game were able to sink countless hours into building the perfect army, and the game's PvP options gave players a means of pitting their toughest troops against each other. But sadly, an unceremonious Twitter announcement from Sony revealed that the game will be going dark on April 14th. Luckily, fans of the game might be able to move over to Guns Up Mobile, which is less an iOS/Android port of the original and more of a spiritual successor that still hits the same mark as the original. In Hellfire Tactics, players choose from dozens of different combat units to put together an unstoppable team before heading into battle against their friends in 8-player online matches. The combatants include demons, hunters, magic users, and an array of fantasy creatures. The indie game launched in November 2022, and despite a promising start, it quickly lost too many players to keep going. On January 21st, 2023, developer J-Waffle Games made the sad announcement that Hellfire Tactics would be putting all future battles to rest on February 28th. According to the developer, running the game's servers became too expensive with the size of its player base, and in the future, J-Waffle Games will be looking at projects that avoid that one big expense.
It's just money. It's made up.
Just 2 years ago, Knockout City was nominated for Best Multiplayer Game at the Game Awards, and it's easy to see why. In a world overloaded by competitive shooters, Knockout City instead takes its inspiration from a childhood game and middle school nightmare, dodgeball. Securing victory in a match requires some clever footwork, quick reflexes, and the help of a power-up ball or two. EA had a surprise hit on its hands, and 5 million players showed up for a free trial event called Block Party in the game's early days. All that enthusiasm, however, turned out not to be sustainable. In February 2023, game director Jeremy Russo revealed that Season 9 would be the end for Knockout City, and the game would go offline in June. Russo wrote, "There are several aspects of the game in need of major disruption to better attract and retain enough players to be sustainable. Velen Studios can't make those changes to the game, but it can keep those things in mind for its next endeavor. Knockout City will survive on PC through private servers." Rumbleverse took the Battle Royale genre and put it in a chokehold, shaking up the traditional formula by making melee combat the center of attention. Developer Iron Galaxy Studios really gave the game its all. And with the support of EA as a publisher, it seemed like the brawling action of Rumbleverse could entice enough players to keep the game alive. It didn't pan out that way. Less than 6 months after launch, EA shuttered Rumbleverse, much to the disappointment of fans. The game lasted only 2 seasons before ending on February 28, 2023. But as a small consolation, any players who spent money in the game became eligible for refunds. Spellbreak from indie developer Proletariat might have lasted less than 3 years, but it still deserves some bragging rights. Proletariat CEO Seth Sivak laid out some of the game's accomplishments in a lengthy Reddit post. Not only was it the first game with day one crossplay between PC, Xbox One, PlayStation, and Switch, but it also pulled in over 10 million players during its short lifespan. Spellbreak put gamers in the midst of PvP action, where spells were flying and seemingly anything could happen. From elemental abilities to teleportation and flight, the battle mages of Spellbreak always kept combat exciting and fresh. Sadly, the game existed in a highly competitive market, and it just couldn't hold its own. The game servers are officially down, but Blizzard acquired Proletariat, which will be bringing the magic to World of Warcraft. Angry Birds set the standard for mobile titles when it was released in 2009. The deceptively simple catapult game has players launching birds with various special abilities at entrenched pigs. Sequels and spin-offs followed, helping Angry Birds go well beyond smartphones. The IP even boasts 2 feature films and an entire theme park dedicated to it.
Someone has anger issues.
Developer Rovio shared its plans on Twitter to take the original game down for those who don't already own it. And on February 23rd, it was removed from the Google Play Store. The developer also highlighted its intentions to shift the name from Angry Birds to Red's First Flight in the App Store. According to Rovio, the original Angry Birds negatively affected new games that the company wanted to promote. The devs actually tried to get rid of Angry Birds back in 2019, and for 2 years the game was unavailable. In 2021, the company published a letter apologizing for not supporting its older releases, and Angry Birds came back a year later. Who knows whether or not Rovio will stick to its guns this time?